Hello, my name is Jon. In this tutorial, I'm going to take you a step further on the payslip. Now, in the previous video tutorials, we create the main menu. We created the employees information. We design this layout with checkboxes, with numbers going up and down, but we have not put the functionality yet. In this video tutorial, we will put all the functionality. We will make sure that all of this work. Okay. Here we have a static date. So what we will need to do in order to basically make this date automatically to change every day, we need to basically delete that and we need to create a formula. And the formula is simple. Equals, type today, open close brackets and press enter on your keyboard, and we have automatically the date here. So every day that changes, this information will this date will change on the current date. So whatever date you have on your computer, this is the date that it will show here. All right. The next thing we need to do is the employee's number. So the employee's number is a number. So let's change the value here to a number. Okay, and let's remove the decimal places. Okay, so this will be a number, but again, I don't want this to be here, so I'm going to delete this. I've only added this before to make sure that the labels, the layout is fine. Okay, so what I will need to do now, the employee number, I'm going to select this cell and I'm going to go to the data tab. I'm going to select the data validation. From the drop down list, I'm going to select list, and here for the source, I'm going to click here on this option there, and I'm going to go to employees table, and I'm just going to highlight this data here. So the source will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., etc. Okay, I'm going to click here again and click OK. Now when I drop down the list, I have the numbers here. Okay, so if I select 3, it gives me 3. If I select 4, it gives me 4, and so on and so forth. All right, so this is how you add a list of things by using Microsoft Excel, and this is how you add in an automated date by using Microsoft Excel. Now, to add the actual name of the person, let's bring these guys here. I'm just going to click what I've done. Let me Control Z to undo to show you. What I've done, I'm selecting the surname green, and then I'm going to click on the border where the mouse cursor changes to a black cross with arrows, and then I'm going to click and drag it to the left hand side. So I've got the first name and the surname. Now, because I've got this here now, I'm going to click on the cell below, and I'm going to click and drag when the mouse cursor changes to the black cross. I'm going to click and drag it upwards, and this will give me will fill this cell with a color that matches my layout. So for the employee's name, at the moment I've got static information. I want to make this information dynamic, so I'm going to highlight both cells and select the delete key on my keyboard to delete the current information. So what I will need to do now, I will need to create a function. And this function I'm going to create is called the Vlookup function. So the Vlookup is not by default there. So what you will need to do is drop down the list here and scroll down to the letter V. Select all, then scroll down to the letter V. So we're looking for a Vlookup. Vlookup basically is looking for vertical information. That's why we call it Vlookup. So it's looking for vertical information. So I'm going to select Vlookup. I'm going to click OK. Okay, the first value I'm looking at, I'm going to look for is lookup value. I need to select the employee's number because each employee's number is unique. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click here on the employee's number, and then click there again. Okay, now the table array that I need to use, I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to the employees table, and this is the array that I'm looking for. So I'm highlighting basically all the data I have. without the headers, just the data. I'm going to click here. And now I'm going to select the column that I would like to display. Because I want to display the name of the person is the first, second is the third column. So here I'm going to type the number 3 and then I'm going to click OK. So now I can see Victoria. So if I go here now and change the ID to number 1, I will see John. So if I go to Employees table, John is ID number 1 and Victoria is ID number 5. ID number 4 is Alex. So if I go here and drop down the list here and select number 4, I should see Alex here. That's great. So now this is the power of Vlookup. So we're looking vertical for a vertical value, and the value for the name is the third column. So let me explain to you again how it works. So we create the function. We call this function Vlookup. We are looking for the C8 cell first. Okay. Now the C8 cell, I'm going to press the escape key on my keyboard to come off from the function. The C8, this is 8 and this is C. So the C8 cell, it gives me basically the identifier. So what we are looking for. And then we say comma, and then we say we are looking within the employees worksheet, within the employees worksheet, and within this data, these cells from B9 to M13, B9, so that's B9 to M13, so that's M13, so all of these we say. I want you to display the third, 1, 2, 3, the third columns, the third cell's information. Sorry for boring you here, but I'll try to make sure that you understand how the Vlookup works. Okay, now I've got this. I don't have to create another Vlookup for that, so I'm going to highlight this now, copy it. I'm going to press the escape key on my keyboard. I'm going to click here. I'm going to paste my formula again. And I need to basically display the fourth cell, because the fourth cell is the person's surname. So if I press the enter key now, I can see Alex Black. If I click 1, I can see John White. If I click on 2, I can see David Green. If I check 3, Anna Blue, and so on and so forth. Okay, so dynamically, I can actually change now the names, the first name and the surname of the user. And dynamically, like I've mentioned before, I can change the date. Right, by following the same process, we need to display the road, the town, and the postcode. So I'm just going to delete these because these are static. I need to make them dynamic. So I already copied my formula. So let's copy the formula again. Right click copy. Press the escape key on your keyboard. Don't forget to press the escape key on your keyboard, because if you don't and you click away, can you see what happens? Okay, so before you do anything, make sure you press the escape key. If you press the escape key on the keyboard, the Vlookup will not be affected. Okay, that's why we're selecting the escape key. So I'm going to right click, copy, escape key on my keyboard, and I'm going to basically highlight all these cells and then right click and select paste. And now I'm going to press the escape key on your keyboard again, and now we'll be able to see that I have not added the formula on all of them. So that's why you have to do it one by one. Do one by one. Press the enter key, paste the formula, press the enter key, right click, paste the formula, press the enter key. Okay, so now for the address, let's have a look on which column the address is. So I'm going to go to the employees table. So we have 1, 2, 3. Let's go here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the fifth column contains the address. So I'm going to go to the payslip and I'm going to change the address here to number 5. So instead of number 3, I'm looking for number 5. Press the enter key, and now I can see the address. Now I'm going to find the town. So here I've got 5, the town is number 6, and the postcode is number 7. I'm going to go here. I'm going to change the town to number 6. Here. Enter. And then the postcode, I'm going to change it to number 7. So I've got the postcode. I hope you understand now, you get a better understanding of how Vlookup works. It's a very powerful tool. So if you drop down the list now, we will be able to see that all the data changes. Now the word Manchester doesn't change because all our employees are in Manchester. So if we put them in different locations, so let's say, oops. Salford equals Pendleton, let's say Rochdale. Okay, so we have different towns now. So if I go here, when we drop down the list, we can actually see now the town changes as well. Okay, as you can see, this is quite very powerful. Okay, now for the payday, we have a static date here. Let's delete that. Right. For the payday, what I want to do, I want to basically make sure that I'm going to add 7 days to the current day. And I'm going to put equals here. And then I'm going to select this cell. And then I will say plus 7. Now 7 days. Press the enter key. So basically, it's going to add 7 days to the current date. So when this changes, this will change. It will change by basically adding 7 days on top of it. So 7 plus 14, 21. So that's correct. Okay. So again, because I'm using the date, it uses the calendar dates are stored on the computer, display on the computer. Okay, I'm done with this now. The next thing we need to do is talk about the salary. Go through and sort out the salary. Now the salary comes from the employees table again as well. So we need to make sure that we have the hourly hour, the hourly rate. Okay, so we have the hourly rate here. Do have the hourly rate here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So is the 8th column the hourly rate? So what we need to do now is go back to the payslip, get one of the VLOOKUPs here, because I don't want to do it again. So in fact, let's do it again so you can actually practice it. So I'm going to go here to the hourly rate. I'm going to add a new function. It's going to be VLOOKUP function. So make sure that I've selected all. So keep scrolling down to the letter V. It's based on alphabetical order. VLOOKUP. Click OK. Now the first value I'm looking at is the identifier, the ID. So I'm going to select this cell here. The next value I'm looking at is the array. So if I go to the employees table, I need to highlight all of this. And then the index that I'm looking at is number, let's go here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So number 8. Okay. Click OK. And now I've got the hourly rate. So when I actually drop down the list here, the hourly rate changes based on the hourly rate for each employee. Okay. For the overtime, what I need to do, so I say equals, and then I will say this value times the asterisk 1.25. Now 1.25 is going to give me time and a half. So for every hour I'm going to work, this person will get paid for 1 hour and a half. Okay, press the enter key on your keyboard. So we have the hour and a half within the overtime. Now, the next thing we need to do is make sure that this button works. Okay. To do this, what we need to do is go to the Developers tab, select the design mode, and click once here. Then we're going to select the properties value, and then where it says link, I need to put basically the actual cell, this cell here. And this cell is on row 18 and on the letter E. So it's E18. So I'm going to put here E18 and then click exit and then click on the next one. I'm going to click on the properties again. I had to click exit. Okay. And then I'm going to put now for the linked cell E, this is 20. So I'm going to put here E20. And press the enter key on my keyboard. Okay. Now, if I go out from the design mode, so I'm going to uncheck this box. If I click to the right, it goes up. If I click to the left, it will go up. Now, I've got a problem. So, because this person cannot work more than 25 hours. So, it basically goes to 38 hours. So, what I'm going to do here, or 40 hours, based on 40 hours shift per week. Yeah. So what I need to do here, I need to make sure that I can only put up to 40. To do this, we're going to go to the design mode. We click here. We click on the properties panel. And basically here for the maximum value, we'll put 40. The minimum value, we'll put 0. That's okay. Press the enter key on your keyboard. And let's do the same for the next one. For that one, we don't want them to work more than 4 hours overtime. If they work more than 4 hours overtime, yeah, this is illegal. Yeah. So maximum they can work up to 12 hours per day. So in this case, if we multiply 4 times 5 is equals 20. So I need to put a restriction that they can only work up to 20 hours per week. So the maximum time here number is 20. Okay. So now if you can type the number 20 manually, or you can actually click here. Oops, let's go off the design mode. You can click here to go up or down. Now, as you can see, it won't allow me to go higher. It allowed me to go lower, but it won't allow me to go higher than 40. So I've done this now. Right, the next thing we need to do is basically work with this. So the values of this is true or false, okay? So what we need to do is we need to basically change this value here. So I'm going to click on the design mode. I'm going to click here. I'm going to click on the properties, and I'm going to go to the linked cell, and I'm going to select this cell here, which is D21. So this is D21 cell. If you're not sure about the cells, if you select the cell on the top left corner, it gives you the actual cell. You can copy this. Control C to copy, because right click won't allow you. You can click then the checkbox, and on the link cell, you can Control V to paste, or you can actually type D21 manually. And just below it, the cell below it is D22 cell, so 22, and then is D. And I'm going to click here, and I'm going to type here D22. And as you can see, it doesn't really matter if it's uppercase or lowercase. I'm going to press the enter key on my keyboard. Now, when if I go off the design mode, if I check the box now, it will give me the word true. And if I uncheck it, it will give me the word false. Same with that. Okay, true or false. Okay, so based on the true or false, I want to make sure that I'm going to allow a specific amount of money to be added to the total here. So In this case, what I need to do, I need to create a function basically based on these statements here, based on this information here. And this if statement basically will be applied here. And if it's true, it's going to add a specific amount of money. If it's false, it's going to leave it as 0. Before I do that, I'm going to go to the rates, and I'm going to put the specific amount of money that I need to put here. So I'm going to put here, let's go back to payslip. Just going to highlight these two, copy them, because I quite like the formatting. So I'm going to go to the rates. I'm just going to select paste. I don't want to paste the formulas or anything like that. Let's increase that. Okay, let's delete that. Let's increase the size of this. Okay, so instead of payday, I'm going to call this car allowance. Let's double click to increase. Okay, and I'm going to highlight these two and click and drag when the mouse cursor changes to black cross. So I'm going to have quite a few things here. Let's delete these titles. Okay, so the next one is I want to put clothing allowance. Then you can put food allowance, etc., etc. Okay, so for car allowance, let's put, say, for instance, 25 pounds. For clothing allowance, I'm going to put 30 pounds. Now, as you can see, the data changes to date, so I'm going to highlight them all. I'm going to go to the Home tab and change this to currency. Okay, so now I've done this. I'm going to go back to the payslip and I'm going to create an if statement here. And I will say if, so I'm going to delete the 0 here. I'm going to click here on the function. I want to insert an if function. So if you go to the most recent used, the if function should be here. Instead of keep scrolling down, can you see here? This is only limited here, so I don't want to keep scrolling. So I'm going to create an if statement. This value here, false. So I'll say if this value here is equals true, yeah, if that's true, then what I want you to do, I want you to basically, I'm just going to click this icon here. I'm going to go to rates. Then I want you to show me this. And click OK. So as you can see here, let's have a look here. If D21 equals true. Okay, that's better. Yeah. If D21 equals true, then show me this. Okay, so I had to manipulate the formula a little bit. Okay. Now, otherwise, basically, show me 0. So I'm going to click here. Oops. Going to go here. I'm just going to say comma 0. If it's true, show me 25. If it's not true, show me 0. Yeah? If I don't put the 0 here, like you saw before, it will give me the default value, which is false, because it doesn't know what to do. So it's basically copying what is there. Okay, so to make sure that my calculations are fully working, I need to make sure that if it's not true, it will return this value here, which is 0. Okay, and I'm going to do the same with this cell here. I'm going to create an if statement. Now the if statement will be the same, so I'm going to copy this, press the escape key on my keyboard, click here, paste it, and instead of 21, I'm looking for 22 now. So I'm going to say if 22 equals false, then rate C8 is not C8, is C9 in this case. It's because I'm looking for the rate C9. So I'm looking for this cell here, which is C and 9. Okay. Okay, show me this. So press the enter key on your keyboard, and I've got the formula there. Now, because this is false, it's 0. If I check it, it gives me 30. If I uncheck it. Now, the good thing with this is if I go, say, for instance, to the rates now, and change this value to 60, and go back to the payslip, I will be able to actually see here 60, because it's looking for a dynamic value here. Okay. All right. Now, because I don't want to see this anymore, what I can do, there's multiple ways to do it. You can actually put these values true or false in different cells, and you can actually hide the cells by highlighting the cells. Right click and hide them. And if you want to edit stuff, you can hide the cells. Alternatively, what I like to do is I like to keep things close to each other, but I'm just going to change the text color similar to the background color. By doing this, people will not be able to actually see the actual text. And if I decide that I want to see the text again, I can always go here, highlight it, and then change the text to whatever text color I like. Okay. All right. So let's highlight this now. In fact, leave them visible for now. But before I publish this to the client, I will hide it to make my application a lot more look more professional. Okay, the next thing we need to do is, now we know how to basically put this in place. We need to basically calculate now to actually show us the overtime here. And to do this, what we will need to do is multiply basically the value that we have on the basic rate times the value that we have on the hours worked. And we do this by selecting this cell, and we can create a sum function. Click OK. And then we will say this value times asterisk this value here, and click OK. So this will allow us to create a sum function. So we add it now. What you can also do, you can actually do this manually. So some people can't even be bothered going through and apply some function. What they do is very simply, you put the equal sign here, you select this value here, you say times an asterisk and then this value, and press enter, and basically you have the same, exactly the same result, and the formula looks a lot more clean, a lot more small. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for here as well. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to type equals. That's how you start in a function. Yeah, equals. I'm going to select this value, and I will say multiply, so times this value here. Press enter, the enter key on the keyboard, and we have now automatically the values changing based on the hours worked, and based on the hours overtime, and based on the hours worked. Okay. So everything works so fine at the moment. Okay. What we need to do now, we need to basically produce the grand total here. Okay. So to do that, we follow the same process. We click here, and then we'll say equals, and then we can say this value plus this value plus this value plus this value. Or we can actually create the sum function. We can actually just highlight all these values here. Okay. So this, if I do this, it will basically still add up all the numbers. Okay. Even though I've got gap. But what I can do, I can hold the control key on my keyboard and highlight the values that I want to highlight, and it's adding comments for me. So that's another way to do it. There's multiple ways to do the same thing. Let's press the enter key on the keyboard, and I've got here a value that is not right. So why is not right? Because I've got here comma instead of plus. If I replace the comma to plus, and press the enter key on my keyboard, I will be able to actually see the total. Because the comma separates the values, but it doesn't add the values together, you see. That's why I didn't know what to do. Now here we have the taxable rate, which is this part. So I'm just going to make sure that this is removed here. Let's click here and use the format painter brush. Let's delete this value here. And I'm going to put this, let's drag it, drag this here. Okay. And I'm just going to click here, use the format painter brush and click here. Okay, that makes more sense now. So total taxable pay. So this is how much money this person has to pay, yeah, tax for. Okay. Now the next thing we need to do is let's go to the national insurance number. Now the national insurance number is basically static at the moment. The national insurance number needs to come from the employees table as well. So this is the national insurance number. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's the ninth column. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to one of my Vlookups that we did before. I'm going to copy that. Right click, copy. Press the escape key on my keyboard. I'm going to click here. I'm going to right click and paste. And the column that we're looking at the moment is number 9, column number 9. If I press the enter key, I can see the national insurance number for this particular client. So if I change that now, the national insurance number changes based on the client's information. Okay. The next thing is the pay period. So now the pay period, we can leave this as 1. Okay. And the tax code, we need to change the tax code. Now the tax code comes from the employees table. So that's the tax code here. Some people may pay less tax, they have different tax code. Okay. So I'm going to go here. So this is number 9. This is column number 10. I'm going to go back to the payslip. I'm going to click here. I'm going to highlight my VLOOKUP, copy it, press the escape key on my keyboard, click on the tax code, delete this information, and now I can go to the function and paste my VLOOKUP. And instead of 9, I'm looking for the 10th column. So press the enter key on my keyboard, and now I've got a dynamic field based on the tax code as well. At the moment, all my clients have the same tax code, so I'm just going to leave this as it is. Okay, the next thing we need to do is the employee's national insurance contribution. Now, before I create the formula here, the if statement, which will calculate the contribution, I need to go to the rates here, and I need to create basically the field where I'm going to hold the national insurance contribution. So I'm going to say NIC, and I will say here £200. So for the first £200, they don't have to pay national insurance. Let's change that to currency as well. Okay. The next thing I need to put here as well is the national insurance rate. So NI rate, and I'm just going to put here 14%. Okay, let's put here, let's change this to percentage. Okay, so we have 14%. And finally, I need to basically make sure that I've got a tax here. So the tax field is going to be 20% as well. Okay, so if I click here and make sure that it's percentage, so I've got 20%. So the national insurance rate is 14%. The tax rate is 20%. I've got my national insurance contribution threshold. So as long as they don't reach to £200, they don't have to pay this 14%. If they go over, then they will have to pay the 14% contribution rate. Okay, let's go back to the page slip now. Let's make this happen. So what I will need to do now, I need to create an if statement here. So I'm going to click on the employees national insurance contribution. I'm going to go to the functions. I'm going to click on the if statement. I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to, if this value here is greater or equals to, is greater than or equals to the value here, if we go to rates, the value here, if that's true, what I want to do, I want to say this times the, okay, and if it's false, I'm just going to put 0. Click OK. So because this is above £200, yeah, is giving me this contribution. So if I bring it down below to £200, this is giving me nil, 0 value. Okay. For the income tax, what we need to do, we need to create another if statement. And our if statement also would look for a Vlookup. So we need basically to look for the value of the weekly income for the weekly income allowance. So let's put income allowance here. So I'm just going to replicate this. I'm going to highlight this and click and drag it. So I'm going to delete this information here. Let's increase the width a little bit. So weekly income, and I will call it allowance. Okay. And I will say this person is only deserves £200 for allowance because of his circumstances, £100 here, £400 here, £200 here. Let's put here 210, and let's put here 300. Okay. All right. So this is the allowance. So what we need to do now, we need to go back here, and based on my if statement, I will need to basically include this allowance to before this person basically pays taxes. Okay, so on the income tax, delete this field here, the static data that we had, and what we are going to do first of all, we need to create a Vlookup here. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to create a Vlookup. The value that I'm looking is the employee number. The table array is on the employees table, so I'm going to highlight all of this. And I'm just going to click here again. And I'm looking for the last column, which is the column 13. So I'm just going to put here 13. Okay. And click OK. All right. So now, based on my selection, I can actually see that everybody is in different, basically, allowance. Okay, weekly income allowance. Okay, so what I will need to do now, I need to actually modify this Vlookup further. So I will need basically to create a calculation based on this Vlookup. So I'm going to open a bracket here after the equal sign, and I will say this value here, the total taxable pay, minus the Vlookup. That's my first calculation. And then close the bracket. Okay. Now, once this first calculation takes place, then I want to multiply this. So I will say times, and then I'm going to select the rates, and then select the 20% for the taxable rate. Okay. And go back here. Oops, no, rates. Click on the taxable rates here. Yeah. And then press the enter key to make sure that your formula is right. All right. So now I've got the taxable rate is based on the user now. So based on the allowance, it's going to basically deduct the allowance. This is what we said. Wherever value is on the total, remove the allowance first, and then based on the total, then and only then show us the total of the amount of tax that the person has to pay. Company pension. We're going to do something similar here as well. Quite a few companies basically have company pension schemes, right? So we need to go to the rates now, and then we need to basically put the company pension scheme. So I'm just going to copy this text, or yeah, right click, highlight, copy this, company pension. So I'm going to go on the rates. I'm just going to paste this there. I'm just going to put here 6%. Press the enter key. Let's convert this to percentage like we did before. Okay. So the company pension is 6%. So in order for me to calculate this now, what I will need to do is multiply basically the total here with times the total, multiply the total here based with the 6% here. All right, like we did before. I'm just going to select here this cell. I'm going to go to the functions. I'm going to put the equal sign. And then I'm going to say the total of this times, I'm going to put the asterisk there. I'm going to go on my rates. I'm going to select here this cell. And then press the enter key on my keyboard. Okay. So if the percentage changes, so we have £42.76. If I go to the rates, if the percentage changes, say for instance to 12%, doubles, this means that automatically the calculation here will change as well. So we have now for the company pension is 85.52. And if I go back here and change this contribution to 50%, this changes to £356.34. So basically, we create in a dynamic section where people can actually change the rates, and based on the rates that have changed, this information will automatically change as well. So finally, we need to calculate the total deduction and the net pay. For the total deduction, what I need to do, I need to select the cell. I create a simple formula here. I'm going to say equals, and then I want to basically say this value plus this value plus this value, and press the enter key. So I'm adding up all these values. Then for the net pay, I'm going to say equals here on the function, and I will say this value minus this value here. Press enter. And this is the net pay that the member of staff will receive after he or she has paid the national insurance contribution, the pension, and the tax. Let's tidy up a little bit here. Let's change that to accounting instead of currency. Change this to accounting to keep consistency. Same here as well. In fact, here we can actually put currency. Again, it's up to you how you would like to basically display the information. Right, so let's go through a summary of what we've done in this video tutorial. We basically went to the employees table. We introduced a new column called weekly income allowance. Then we went to the rates. We introduced some rates here. We added some extra fields here. In fact, let's delete these fields. So by clicking and dragging here, I can change the formatting. So we introducing some new rates. Let's bring the logo there. Let's right click here and left click to just reduce the size a little bit. Okay, so we can actually see the information. We went to the payslip, and we started by basically saying equals today to basically get today's date. And then here we went to the data, and then we added data validation, and then we selected list, and then we selected the values. The values coming from here, 1 to 5. Based on these values, we basically created Vlookups here, 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 and here, as well as some other locations. We have created Vlookups like here. We create the Vlookup here. We have created Vlookup. Even what is it? Let's see. Yeah, even here we create the Vlookup, and we basically sandwich the Vlookup within a number of different calculations. So we minus basically the Vlookup based on a particular value. Then we multiply this value with another value which is on a different worksheet, which is the rates. Okay. We also made this work as well. So the left and the right left and right arrows by actually increasing or reducing the numbers. And we also put restrictions that will not bypass more than 40 numbers. And here we put restrictions that it's not going to bypass more than 20 numbers. We did this by going to the Developers tab. We went to the View Design Mode. So we click that. We then click on the Properties, and basically we change the values here. So the linked value is here, E18, and for the other one is we use E20, and we basically put the maximum number here. Okay, so this is how you create an advanced payroll by using Microsoft Excel. This video tutorial was shorter than 1 hour. Hopefully you will be able to actually finish it off a lot quicker, or maybe it might take you a bit longer, but once it's done, it's done. So what we need to do next in the next video tutorial, I'm just going to I'm going to talk about the payroll and basically show you how to create charts as well. And this will conclude our video course. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you've learned something new today, and I'm going to see you on the next video tutorial. Bye. Bye.